our focus is really around data reuse. Of course, it's a data protection solution at its core, but the focus is really around our ability to put those data copies in a customer's environment to use. Supporting, again, as Steve said, both Hyper-V and VMware today, as well as SQL and Oracle on both virtual and physical manifestations. So, what is Protect Plus? It's based upon sort of these 4 design principles of being modern, easy, fast, and low cost. What do we mean by that? Well, one, it's very simple and lightweight, flexible, and easy to deploy. So Steve mentioned our standard deployment model is a single OVA file. I've got, Steve mentioned customer testimonials. I had one that I spoke with in the UK last week who validated, our statement around you can literally be backing up data within 15 minutes with the product. It's an OVA deployment. It is SLA based, as Steve said, so it really simplifies the concept of protecting, whatever assets you have that you're trying to make these copies of, and really helps you to then start to be able to manage by exception in the environment. Sorry, I've got to take these off. I think I'm interrupting the audio. So the ability to start to manage by exception, right? The platform actually shows you, what's being protected, by particular service levels, and more importantly, what's not. So your resources that manage those processes can now start to focus on just knowing what they need to address when something's not working, and have clear visibility into what's working and what's not. Self-service is a really key component to the technology. We're getting more and more requests in the field from customers that they want self-service capabilities, but the challenges that they typically have with existing solutions is that unless it has a robust role-based access control capability built in, you run the risk that is the wrong organization, the wrong group getting access to a data set that they shouldn't. And so we've got full role-based access controls built in, which I'll go into more detail. It is enterprise proven and scalable. As I mentioned, the standard deployment model, single OVA file that contains the 3 components that make up Spectrum Protect Plus. There's the Spectrum Protect Plus server itself. There's the vSnap repository, and then there's a VADP proxy that handles the actual data movement into the.
There was a slide with all kind of vendors, and a couple of them were actually doing exactly what you're telling us right now. One of the things you told us is that you want to ease the process within the organization. But now I hear you say, okay, but you need a server, you need proxies, you need all that kind of things. So you have to think about that as well. Well, other vendors that do the same thing, you buy an appliance from them, put it in, and can do the same thing as what you're telling us right now. So are you going to do an appliance as well, or is it always just software only?
So we have the capability today to do that through a VersaStack offering with the technology. Mm-hmm. But the what I was going to make, it just escaped me.
A lot of, there are companies that do, first of all, we're a competitor. We're trying to compete in the market space again to elevate where we were with Spectrum Protect into, kind of this new next generation of protection, right? The other thing too is around a lot of the proxies and that sort of thing. Some people want to buy an appliance, other people don't want to buy an appliance, right? Mm-hmm. From a cost standpoint, there's reasons not to buy it. There's a reason to just buy software. So, it's kind of, what does the particular client want, right? And as well as the particular capabilities, right? So they might want an appliance, but there's an ease of being able to do things like pull data sets up and that stuff faster with our software component. Maybe I want to do that, right? Maybe my data reuse capability is better than what you might find in an appliance. So, there's give and takes with all the different technology. It's kind of how we choose to use it. On the appliance
hang on one second there. So you're saying with the software, though, you don't want to buy an appliance, you still have to buy hardware. You got to put the data somewhere.
Of course.
Right. So they're still buying hardware. They're still buying servers.
There's no vendor that you don't.
Right. But the difference between buying an appliance was just a pre-done, pre-integrated deal versus software. You make it sound like it's software only, but with software only, there's got to be a hardware in your right.
Of course. Right.
But it's important.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. The point I was trying to make about ease of deployment is, again, the standard deployment model is a single OVA file that contains the 3 components that make up the product. So you can literally be up and running in 15 minutes and have the product functioning. In that instance, your vSnap repository is literally running within the virtual appliance. You're just providing storage to it from your hypervisor. But we have the ability to scale any of those components as needed. One of the challenges with an appliance-based approach is, you've got preset, sizes, so to speak, maybe a small, medium, large. This gives customers the ability to adapt that infrastructure to whatever their needs might be. And I'll talk a little bit more about our blueprints that we provide around how to size this technology. But an example might be I would deploy the OVA file, but then I want to say, I want to also replicate that vSnap repository to a secondary location, maybe for geographic separation purposes or different lines of business, whatever that might be. We give you the ability to just, there's a standard installer, whether it's a virtual or physical, where you can spin up another vSnap instance as needed. Right? So it gives you the ability to scale to meet whatever the customer's requirements might be. And it's all about automating the reuse of these data copies, right? So it's, again, through our ability to create templates in the platform that define how things get backed up, how things get reused, and our ability to combine that with roles-based access control means that you can automate all these processes. And we talked about APIs earlier, and the concept of integrating with other maybe automation tools and technologies that an organization might be using. It really becomes critical when you talk about providing this sort of capability that you provide a very robust API to the teams that need that access. You quite often wouldn't want to give, say, a development team API access to your storage array, right? Because what are they going to do? They're probably going to go in and consume up all your storage or wreak some sort of havoc within the system. Our RESTful API was specifically designed to introduce the controls that are needed to be able to give self-service based access to the types of things that we're describing, but do it in a controlled and automated way, making sure that the particular end user is getting access to the right data set and not accessing things that he shouldn't. And he's able to do that, again, either through the interface or through an API call. Quite often what we're seeing nowadays is it's not necessarily a user or a person in an organization that needs to make that request to have that data set and that infrastructure spun up as needed. It's quite often another system that's making that request, right? You have to have that API capability. So if the customer is using, say, a Chef or a Puppet to do their code automation, but they want to be able to spin up a copy of a production database to be able to run that against, they can literally make a single API call to the platform to be able to enable that capability. And then the last one, obviously, is budget.
Could you elaborate a bit more about that single API call? Is it actually genuinely a single API call, or do you need...
Sure, yeah. So, initial setup, you might make multiple API calls to develop whatever that template is, right?
Yep.
The template that, say, does the reuse, that spins up the environment from the data copy. But once that policy exists within the platform, you're literally making a single REST API that says, kick off the job to start that.
Which is no different to any of other products out there either. They'll use the same REST API. They'll work exactly the same. So it's not really a USP as such.
Well, again, I think one of the key differences here is that our RESTful API was specifically designed for self-service-based access. The concept that you want to be able to control what people are doing. You want to give them the ability to self-service their own needs for data access, for environment access, spin up a particular environment. But you want to be able to do that in a very controlled way.
It's good that you guys are doing that. All your competitors are doing it, so it's good that you're doing it because
Absolutely.
That way you're keeping up.
There we go. So I just want to talk a little bit about our catalog. That is kind of the call it the secret sauce behind Spectrum Protect Plus. It's really the foundation of upon which the platform is built. As we mentioned earlier, it is based upon MongoDB. That's the database that we leverage. What is that catalog doing? It's tracking everything about the environment. Not just the copies that are there, and the copies that we create and land into the vSnap repository, but also the details about the infrastructure itself. Right? We'll go in, we talk to the hypervisor, we'll inventory its hierarchy, and we maintain that information in our catalog. Having that rich global single monolithic catalog across all the data about the environment, the metadata, and so forth, enables us to do some of the interesting things we talk about, like this ability to do robust reporting. We've got a preset set of reports that are built into the platform, but very easy for us because we have all that valuable information in our metadata catalog, the ability to create custom reports, for a customer as needed. It certainly is what enables all this, these self-service reuse use cases, including things like single file recovery. We have I'll talk more about this, but we have one single interface for doing file recovery, through the platform, and the ability to again marry that with self-service. So now you can have users being able to self-service their recovery needs without having to burden IT, and bringing back those recovering those files. And freeing them up to focus on other things.
Can you have multiple, and I don't know if it's the right term, nodes of Spectrum Plus in a cluster, and how is the MongoDB metadata shared across that?
So the architecture of the platform, there were 3 components I mentioned. There's the Protect Plus server itself, there's the vSnap repository, and then there are the V8EP proxies that you would use to do the actual data movement. The architecture is designed to have one single instance of SPP server. You don't need more than one, as long as it can communicate with all of your locations and your networks. A single SPP server instance can manage everything. You have the ability to spin up and scale out your vSnap repositories as needed. So I can expand the capacity on a particular repository. I can place them in different locations. And that single SPP server instance can communicate with them both. And then again, as Steve mentioned earlier, we have the ability to replicate. Say I'm backing up to my primary vSnap instance in my production data center, but I also want those copies then replicated to a secondary location where my development team wants to work off of those copies.
So with a single server instance, what happens when that goes down, and how does that recoverability?
So we have built-in capabilities for configuration and catalog backup that actually goes directly into the vSnap repository. So if you were to say lose the virtual appliance that crashed, all you would need to do is spin up a new OVA file, restore the catalog, and you're back up and running.
So it's not like automated cutover or failover from one server to another. It's something that you'd have to do from a manual perspective?
Not today. So initial capabilities around replication, it's asynchronous replication without failover. The future release later this year is going to introduce automated failover and failback. So let me just try to pick up the pace a little bit. I want to make sure we're staying on time here. So there are kind of 6 key attributes to the product in terms of its capabilities, and I'm going to go and have a couple slides that discusses each one of those. But again, first and foremost, the fact that it's SLA based, and I'll describe for you kind of how that works. The second is it's ease of deployment and ease of management, and the ability for you to allow any type of user access to the system specific to what their needs are. Again, all based on the role-based access control capabilities that we have built in. I mentioned the global search and recovery for not just machines and disks, but for files as well, and I'll demonstrate that for you today. The instant data recovery, again, the fact that it's snapshot-based, that when you want to use a copy, there's no streaming of data off of some backup environment or pulling it off of tape. It's literally mount the snapshot and spin up what you need. It's up and running within seconds to minutes. Again, we do extend the capabilities of Spectrum Protect. Again, from a positioning point of view, we view Protect Plus as short-term operational recovery and backup, as well as enabling these types of use cases we described. But when you have the need for long-term retention and archive capabilities, we have direct capabilities via Protect today. And I can even talk about kind of where that's going to evolve.
Speaking about retention, do you guys have anything like data classification for compliance, that sort of things?
In what respect? Like
Content-based, yeah.
What's that?
Content-based, things like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, not today. I'm not sure if we.
Is that in the roadmap?
Longer term, yes, that's where we're positioning the traditional Spectrum Protect for long-term retention and to take over a lot of those use cases.
Yeah, because in Europe, the GDPR is going to be kicking off in a couple of months' time, right? So there's going to be a lot of needs in that space, isn't it?
Yeah, especially from a data management perspective, that's important, isn't it? Because that's where you could have USPs. If you take third-party solutions like DataGuard that taps into the vSphere API or the Hyper-V API and gives you that level of granular data assessment classification, that would help towards GDPR compliance. Azure, for example, has got that built-in Azure Compliance Manager now. Rubrik's got that already,
Rubrik can look right
Veeam's
VMs
building
back
that
open,
into their platform as well, so that'd be good. I've got another question, though, as well. Are you doing anything to integrate some of these capabilities directly with IBM Cloud in the backend to provide some specific use cases that are unique to you guys?
Yeah, we have a slide to that.
Okay, perfect.
And then the last point is just, again, around the, the fact that our leveraging of APIs, both inbound and outbound, right? The ability for you to integrate other products with Protect Plus via our API, and the fact that we leverage the APIs of other platforms that we integrate with. And the fact, again, the fact that that's an agentless solution. So let me just kind of dive a little bit deeper into each one of those points. So, policy-driven SLA-based automation, what does that really mean? It's simplifying the way that you manage the protection or backup or copy creation of your sources. A product comes with 3 predefined service levels that are editable, and you have the ability to create service levels to meet whatever requirements that you have, so fully customizable. And again, the concept, one of the concepts behind taking this SLA-based approach is the ability to start managing by exception. So you're really focused on addressing and spending your time as a say a backup administrator on dealing with what's not working, because you have clear visibility and reporting in terms of what's working and what's not.
How can you apply those to virtual machines? Can it be done based on vSphere tags, folder structured, clusters?
So you have the ability today to do it at the vCenter level. I can do it at a data center, folder, virtual machine, and tags are now in, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so tags as well. Yep. So kind of what is that, those SLAs, how does that, translate into the product itself? Well, an SLA, it's going to define, either the number of copies or the retention. How many copies or how long do I want to keep a particular copy for? Where do I want it to land, right? Which particular vSnap instance do I want it in my primary location, secondary location, and so forth. Again, I mentioned there's 3 predefined SLAs, and you have the ability to customize those to meet whatever your requirements might be. And again, we have to address the need for compliance and governance, the ability to offload via Spectrum Protect for VE to Protect itself.
Well, go ahead.
Sure.
Capability to offload data to IBM Spectrum Protect. That's the other product, the bigger product.
Yes, that is.
What used to be TSM.
What used to be
right?
TSM.
So this is a separate product.
Yes.
Completely new, different,
It is
distinct.
a brand new.
Run standalone?
Separate.
So, but
different
when I
architecture.
offload data to Protect, I mean, it would be a different catalog there than I have. So it's 2 catalogs.
So we maintain within Protect Plus visibility into what we send to Protect. So if you want to do a recovery, you have the ability to do it from either platform. If I want to recover something that I sent to Protect, but do it within Protect Plus, we have the ability to do that. Certainly it's not an instant restore like mounting a snapshot where the data's got to be streamed back to the vSnap repository and then mounted, but you have the flexibility to do that from either platform.
Okay, I think in the future when you do this presentation, one of the things you should say up front is that this is not TSM. This isn't Spectrum Protect.
Fair enough.
I think
Yeah,
that would have
good point.
That would
Thank you.
definitely.
And the vSnap repositories are block storage only? Is that how I understand it?
Today, yes.
And it's network shared storage, SAN kind of storage, not just,
And you're going to see there'll be some expansion in terms of the flexibility around how that gets deployed.
And a particular vSnap repository is under the control of one Spectrum Plus instance. Is that, it's not like a shared repository across multiple?
No, again, typically because you're deploying a single Protect Plus server instance that can control and manage and interact with multiple vSnap repositories. Make sense?
Yeah.
So, the next point again around roles-based access control. So, we have predefined roles built into the system, and the ability for you to customize the roles as well. So whether it's giving the capabilities to a backup admin or a help desk person that's just doing file recoveries for end users, our roles-based access control capabilities allow you to do that. Now, how is it implemented within Protect Plus? We operate on the concept of resource groups and roles, right? So a resource group is basically just an aggregation of different resources in the system. Could it be things like hypervisors or specific virtual machines? Could be an application or an application server. Anything of that nature. You create that resource group. You associate it with a role that dictates what you can actually do with those things. And then you associate those two with particular users. And I should mention those users can come from your LDAP enterprise directory.
And those groups would still have the same access to like vSphere tags, so I could apply it to a specific tag. If VMs have this tag, then these users have access to it.
I believe we can do that. Let me double check on this. If you can make a note, check on that. And then I mentioned the global search and recovery. So it is a single, unified catalog across all the infrastructure. So if you need to do a file recovery, you don't need to know which server it sits on. You don't need to know which hypervisor it's on. You literally have a single interface where you can type in, and there's some filters as well, and gives you the ability to do file recoveries either back to the original location to an alternate location as well. And again, that can be combined with our role-based access control, so you can provide the ability for, say, self-service based file recovery. Instant data, an application and VM access, again, because the technology is snapshot based, it's all about rapid access to data sets when you need them. Again, our focus is around the reuse capabilities of the product as opposed to just the protection. And the fact that it's a snapshot based technology, when you need to leverage a particular copy, all we need to do is mount that snapshot to the particular hypervisor and spin up what's needed. There's no streaming data per se from say a backup, a tape or archive.
So are you using like change block tracking?
Yes. Yeah. So for virtual machines, we're using CBT for VMware, we're using RCT for Hyper-V, and then for our application support, we support both Oracle and SQL, virtual and physical. And so for Oracle, it's RMAN image backups, and for SQL, it's we're leveraging VSS.
You talk about DevOps, but you're talking about backups with SQL and Oracle. They're going to be using more, even MongoDB. They're going to be using Cassandra. They're going to be using NoSQL stuff. What are you doing for that?
I've got a slide that'll address it. They're all on the roadmap. We have a pretty aggressive plan to expand our application support through the rest of this year.
And do you back up your own MongoDB database?
Yes. Yeah, we actually, it's part of the catalog backup I mentioned earlier. So you can configure within the system to back up the catalog, which today sits within the SPP server instance, to back that up into the vSnap repository, which can also be replicated if needed. And so at any point in time, you could recover from that, restore back to whatever that copy is. So how does this rapid data system access manifest itself within the product itself? We've give the ability to choose from any of these multiple point in time images and restore or spin up any one of those copies. Again, I mentioned there's the self-service capabilities that allow you to do that in an automated way for any of those particular types of use cases. There's obviously the API we discussed for an integration with other platforms. And an important point, the second to last bullet, is the fact that we keep track of those things. Again, if you're doing those types of things in a manual way, it's very easy to start to see sprawl across the environment. We actually manage and maintain what you've spun up. Any active resources, as we can consider them, are visible to you, and you have the ability to either go in and manually tear those things down if needed, or make it part of the automated process where you can't spin up a new copy unless we tear down what was originally there. Okay? So again, the application support. So we support both SQL and Oracle today in virtual and physical formats. For SQL, we'll support both failover clustering as well as always-on availability groups, and with Oracle, it's ASM and rack configurations are supported. Again, it is based on the technologies I described. We're still doing block level incrementals for those.
I thought Spectrum Plus was just a virtualized environment backup tool, but you're saying here we can actually back up like an Oracle database machine or a SQL Server machine directly without using.
Yes. Yeah. So we've expanded that capability this year to support not just virtual environments but physical as well.
Okay.
And again, that's all agentless. So there's no agents to manage. We are at runtime when say a backup policy runs or a recovery policy runs. We are connecting at runtime securely to that application server that you've registered and provided us those securely stored credentials, and we're connecting in and manipulating the application, say, to quiesce the database and so forth as needed. So no agents to manage.
Can you also manage the boot sequence when you're actually doing the cloning as well? So like what VMs boot up in what order?
Should be there.
I don't think so in this.
If it's not there now, it's coming. I'll double check. Make a note of that one as well, Steve. Just again to your point around Glenn around additional application support. This is our a statement of direction for the. There's 2 additional releases coming this year, one Q3, one Q4. We expect to bring on support for all of these and potentially additional applications as well. Again, we'll all be agentless in our approach. Steve, did you want to be? I know you like got an affinity for talking about the cloud stuff, so I'll let you.
Yeah, so we're actually releasing so our next release of this product is the 23rd of this month. We're actually releasing a cloud version that is tied directly to, I forget who asked the question, directly to the IBM cloud for VMware on IBM cloud capabilities. So again, it's wherever you run VMware on IBM cloud, we can actually run Spectrum Protect Plus, as I talked about, as the Spectrum Protect Plus server and the vSnap repository in the cloud, not only for backing up applications that you might be running in the cloud already within the marketplace that you might already go there and set up particular applications, but also you can run it up there and actually talk to applications that you're protecting, and then also replicate to have that second copy if you want to have a copy up into the cloud as well. Push button simplicity basically means when you order it, we go in and we do all the configuration in the back. You don't have to wait for anything. You don't have to do anything manually yourself. And the bring your own license capability is if you purchase Spectrum Protect Plus and you've decided I don't want to deploy it on the infrastructure within my organization, I'd like to do it in the cloud, you can actually leverage those licenses to do it in the cloud as well. Or a lot of folks at IBM buy solutions through our suite licensing, right? So if I have the ability to run suite, I can run it locally within my environment, or I can run it in the cloud as well as a part of my overall license capability.
So this is to back up data that sits on the VMware cloud and VMware on IBM cloud, or this is to back up on-premise VMware data, or
either or,
for example, and then back it up onto VMware cloud and IBM?
Theoretically, you could go there. You could back up your on-premise data center, replicate that to the vSnap instance in the cloud, and then spin those copies up there, or vice versa, or
right, okay.
Whatever iteration works for you.
or protect the ones that you're running within the cloud as well.
Right.
What about other clouds? Do you support similar
Next slide.
capabilities on Azure and AWS?
Yep. So all coming.
So I'm going to let just Jim kind of just speak to kind of the additional statement of direction around what we're doing with other cloud vendors.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things up here. The first, we talked about the offload to protect to the other product. We're going to generalize that, and we're going to start moving direct data through S3. And so we'll put S3 in front of protect, so we're not relying on just native APIs into protect itself. So that's going to open us up to pushing data out to other clouds. And then you have data that's born on the cloud, different data sets that are only in the cloud, and protecting those. So you see some of that up there. And then some of the more cloud orchestration platforms like vCloud Direct or vRealize, and being able to protect not just VMs, but we're talking about boot sequences and groups of machines, and protect the higher level management that are being provided by.
So you're going to take the VMs, you'll be able to copy them directly to S3. You'll have copies. So one thing I don't see here is a statement of direction. What about the ability to spin up those VMs as, let's say, Amazon EC2 instances? Every other one of your competitors does that.
Yes, because they're in native format, whether that's Oracle or a VM or.
Well, it's VM.
SQL
They spin. Yeah, there's the drivers in there, right? And they spin that all up. Are you going to be able to do that?
Yes, because we're in a position to do that. Yes, because we have everything in the right data format to be able.
But you're not there today, and it's not in your direction here.
I think it should be on there.
Should be on the screen.
One of the.
So spinning up as
Yes.
is cloud native
Yes.
VMs.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim. And again, so this is kind of reiterating the integration we have with Spectrum Protect today. I should clarify, so that last bullet point that Jim, or first bullet point Jim mentioned around the S3 support. Today, the mechanism that we leverage to do the offload to Spectrum Protect is a particular Spectrum Protect product called Spectrum Protect for VE, or for virtual environments. Specifically, we use the data mover components of that IBM product. It was made sense with the initial launch of the product because many of our customers leverage that already today, and it's a simple plug it in and point it towards those data movers, and now we can offload to protect. However, the plan is to develop, again, a more flexible S3-based interface that will support not just going to protect, but to other platforms as well. But again, this gives the integration that we have with Protect is this ability to again meet not just short-term backup and operational needs in your virtual and application environments, but also support offload for long-term retention, archive compliance, and so forth.
Quick note, we can support boot sequences today.
We can.
Yes,
Okay,
we can.
yeah.
So how's it priced? I mean, is it priced on a per gigabyte protected basis? Is that?
So Steve's actually, I got two slides at the end. If we can just wait, I'll let him address that when we get there.
All right, yeah.
I think I covered most of this already. I don't think there's anything new here. I think I just spoke to this before the slide was up, basically just describing how we leverage VE to do that offload today. You saw Steve's slide earlier. You talked about kind of how the architecture works today and how we're able to, once you land the snapshots into the vSnap repository, you have flexibility in terms of where that can go from there, whether I want to offload to protect or I want to replicate to another repository in another data center up in the cloud and so forth, and leveraging the roles-based access control in the platform to maybe relegate my backup admin for defining how the copies get created and defining those SLAs and so forth, but give the ability for the application owners, the VM admins, the developers, so forth, through roles-based access control, to be able to do that spin-up of those copies in any of those environments as needed. And again, the
Can
S3...
you go back one slide?
This one?
Does the hypervisor on the one side need to be the same hypervisor on the other side?
Meaning vendor, like VM to VM, VMware to VMware? Yes, today, yes. We are looking at the ability to go cross a hypervisor, but it's not there today. And again, so just the key here is that the S3 offload that we're going to introduce just is going to give you more flexibility in terms of what you can do when you want to move those copies beyond just the vSnap repository where they reside within Protect Plus. And then we talked a lot about the RESTful API. Again, I think I don't want to reiterate everything I described, but it's again the fact that we're based upon a RESTful API. Everything you can do with our platform through our interface can be done through a REST API or potentially multiple REST API calls, and you can have that coming from any other technology that can speak REST. Gives us the ability to integrate with other tools that might be in place. So, as Steve said, process can be the most difficult thing to change. You don't want to tell your developers they got to do something different if they can literally just make an API call from the tool they're already using to have us spin up what they need. Spin up the data copy, spin up the virtual machines, so they can put their code there and do their testing. They're going to be happy.
Do these capabilities not exist in the Spectrum Protect product?
Which particular?
Well, like all the stuff you're talking about here, whether it's the copies, the ability to integrate with the VMware APIs for change block tracking, all that stuff, is that not available in the Spectrum Protect product, or is it
The full RESTful API?
all the stuff you're talking about? These features are not available in the main Spectrum product.
So most of them are. So the ability to protect VMware data, for example, and spin up copies.
Yeah.
Because it's not a native format, there's just a lot more moving parts. So this simplifies a lot of that. The REST API is the one thing that's probably brand new that we don't have in Spectrum Protect.
Spectrum Protect doesn't have REST API. Okay.
They don't. They have some. We have some REST API that we added on later, and you can do limited use case. This is built
Basically
from ground
built
up.
From ground up
From
from REST
right.
API.
REST API.
I'm just trying to figure out why you guys didn't choose to put this functionality in that main product and keep it a separate product. Is there a different market space you're trying to hit with this?
Not necessarily a market space, but that's a good question, right? So if you think about the fact that a big part of the way we've looked at it is to come in with fresh eyes, right? And a lot of our competitors were coming in and they were actually going right past the backup and the storage administrator and going right to the virtual administrator, right? Mm-hmm. And the virtual administrator or the database administrator had a lot of different requirements. Trying to get a traditional or sell a traditional backup product that's as we talked about before, a 25-year-old product, wasn't really going to fly, right? We needed to have certain capabilities and things that are in Spectrum Protect Plus that added that newness, the 2 to 3 clicks to get to where you need, those types of things that are important for the things that they were looking for. And the nice thing is a little bit of a different market, right? To refresh the partners' environment, to be able to say, hey, let's go after these types of things that you might not necessarily have gone after a SMB customer with a larger product such as Spectrum Protect. We've done a little bit of both.
And the agentless part is key as well. The fact that it is a truly agentless solution versus Protect has as Steve said, a long pedigree in all the different environments that we support and so forth, but there's lots of different,
Well, in that going at the virtualization guy, all the solutions are agentless, all of them.
Correct.
Yep.
Right? So that's just what that world looks like.
Yep.
But in different, like if you look at some of the enterprise guys, they keep it in the main, as an option for the main product, but they still keep it integrated in the main product, one metadata catalog, et cetera, right? I don't have two, right? I don't integrate, I don't offload, it's just part of the product. Whereas, in the little, I'll say the little guys, the VMs, the rubrics, and those guys, they just focus on that and they don't pretend to do anything bigger. That's what they do. So this is kind of like in the middle somewhere where I've got, if I'm a Spectrum Protect customer, I'm paying a lot of money, and then you're going to tell me I got to go buy a separate product to do this stuff, I'm kind of pissed at you.
If you're a Spectrum Protect customer and you've been a long time customer, more than half of our customers buy it through the suite anyway. And when we talk about license, this comes with suite.
But it's a separate product, different install, different metadata catalog, right? It's a separate thing, and that's what some of the other competitors bang you on, right?
I don't disagree.
And if I'm a non-IBM customer, I'm looking at this, I'm like, all right, so I get this. Now I really can compare this to those rubric VMware things, and so I'm trying to figure out how I can.
It certainly, Protect Plus certainly can be considered its own standalone data
Right.
protection solution. The way we position it with respect to Protect is, again, short-term operational backup and recovery versus long-term archive retention and so forth. But really, a customer is going to define what that means, right? And what if they want to, if they feel that they can leverage a vSnap repository with the replication capabilities as their both long-term retention and operational.
I'm just trying to figure out how you're targeting this, yeah.
The process, as Steve was explaining too, the process is the hardest to change. We have a lot of big customers that still do traditional ingest backups and haven't really moved to a modern.
I deal with a lot of them.
So it's not, so it's not necessarily we're telling them to change. They're needing change anyway.
Sure. I think I touched on this as well, but there's some questions around how do we protect the catalog and so forth. That's all built in with the latest version of the product. You have the ability to back up and restore the catalog again into the vSnap repository. You can replicate that between vSnaps and so forth, so you can quickly recover if, say for instance, your vSnap, or I'm sorry, your SPP instance, were to fail. And then I mentioned blueprints earlier. If you're not aware, blueprints are something that we do for many of our products with customers. It's and it becomes especially important when you're talking about a software-defined solution where you have the potential to deploy that on any sort of infrastructure, right? It could be different server size, different capacities, and so forth. So we put a lot of effort into testing around different use cases and different deployment sizes and so forth. So we give that guidance to customers. Again, it's a simple, easy initial deployment. You can spin up the OVA file and you're off and running. But if you go to start to expand this across your enterprise, you're going to certainly look for some guidance around what are the best practices for, say, sizing the vSnap repository, or how many proxies do I need, and so forth. And so we provide blueprints that fill that need for customers. And the last, I think, two, Steve wanted to talk a little bit about the pricing for you guys.
Yeah. So another key differentiator to what we're trying to accomplish here too is IBM isn't traditionally known as like a digital sales model, right? But we're trying to really infuse the digital sales model. So this solution through the IBM Marketplace is available for a free 30-day trial, so anyone can come in, download it, try it, and test it, and that sort of thing. If you need longer, like a traditional proof of concept, all you got to do is call your rep. We don't charge for it. It's really a 90-day free proof of concept, but for the most part, when you go on the website and download it, it's a 30-day trial. We sell it in 10 packs, so a 10-pack is $2,000 per 10-pack. It's roughly $200 per VM. There's no additional charges for agents for Oracle, SQL, or anything like that because we do it all agentlessly. So it's fairly inexpensive. So when we talked about being able to meet the budget needs and requirements of the business, right? I think we've really hit the mark here. $2,000 per 10-pack and offload to Spectrum Protect. You have to have Spectrum Protect entitled. Now, that means if you're a non-Protect customer and you want to do long-term archive and offload, right, you have to, buy Protect, right? Chances are, if you're not a traditional Protect customer, but you like Protect Plus, you're just going to stay with Protect Plus. And as Christian said before, you're going to leverage. There's no limit to that repository. You just might do offload because you want to, but you don't have to. The other thing is that if you buy it through Spectrum Protect Suite, it comes as a part of the suite, right? So, and we define our protection suites both by front end and back end. So front end and back end really determines based on the size of the initial, either the upfront capacity you're protecting or what is it once it's deduped and compressed, right? You can buy it that way. At the end of the day, my opinion, right, and this is just my opinion, right, licensing is really, it really comes out to about the same. It's $2,000 per 10-pack of systems. Different vendors change how they price things because they're trying to align to what the competition is doing in the marketplace, and I want to do it this way, so I have a price competitive for my sales force to compete. At the end of the day, it's really all about the same thing.